This is the future. And humanity is all but extinct.
First, they start skipping prescribed drug dosages. Then they begin touching.
I volunteer as tribute!
You can stop this. You can change things.
I know that there's something more.
Then we've only got one choice. We fight.
Fight the Future with Dan and Paul.
Welcome to Fight the Future with Dan and Paul. I'm Dan.
And I'm Paul.
And we have another special guest with us tonight.
Hi, I'm Gaby.
Yeah, welcome, Gaby.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's partly that you're my friend, but also that I once heard you use the phrase, I volunteer as tribute in casual conversation.
Yes.
That made me want to have you for this podcast.
Yeah, I bring some much-needed diversity to this podcast. Oh, I meant that I was an American, but...
Using I volunteer as tribute in casual conversation, you're clearly someone who knows something about this whole series. Would you consider yourself a fan of the series?
I'm sort of a hesitant fan because when you're a fan of something, you enjoy it. And while I know and like The Hunger Games, I wouldn't say I enjoy The Hunger Games.
I mean, I guess there's a difference between enjoying the, reading it and the story as opposed to, endorsing the Hunger Games themselves.
So, Paul, you're saying that there might be people who are not fans of either the book or the movie, but are fans of the Hunger Games themselves?
Yeah, they're fans of the concept of a Hunger Games kind of event.
Right. Maybe they have
certainly.
Quidditch-style tournaments, except...
Right. Muggle Hunger Games.
Murder Quidditch.
Yeah. This series, the Hunger Games series, is actually second only to Harry Potter in terms of its approval among young adult book readers.
Well, I guess it might have the sort of gender-neutral appeal that, say, Twilight, while vastly popular, does not have.
Right.
I think that's why these movies are so popular right now, is that studio executives figured they found the perfect formula. It's like if you have a very romantic plot line, but then you also have people being stabbed and shot in the same story, then it can appeal to all quadrants. In every episode, we talk about the plot, we talk about the plausibility, scariness, how would we do, and then we talk about hope for the future. We're just going to cover the first Hunger Games movie/book in this podcast. We may lightly touch on some of the atmosphere of the later books, but we're not going to reveal big twists or anything like that, so it's safe as far as those kind of spoilers. We are planning to do the other books in future episodes. And also just a note that I'm in Italy, and Paul is in Victoria, and Gaby's in Brooklyn at the moment.
Mm-hmm. It's truly international.
Yeah. Basically all the major power centers, I would say. Rovereto, Italy, and Victoria, British Columbia, and Brooklyn. And
pretty much an entire day's worth of time changes, too.
All right, well, let's get right into the story in this case.
The story.
The Hunger Games takes place in what is known as Panem, which used to be known as North America. And now it's this weird sort of big colonial mishmash of disaster. Basically, there is a capital, which is rich and prosperous, and they manage to live that lifestyle by having a series of 12 districts around the continent. And each district is in charge of supplying something needed to the capital. The people in the districts generally tend to be poor and oppressed. It turns out that years ago, there was a rebellion against the capital. The rebellion was a failure. So as punishment, every year the capital hosts the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is a reality television program wherein 2 teenagers are selected from every district. Then they're thrown into this arena, they fight to the death, and one person makes it out. And whoever makes it out, in theory, brings glory to their district, food for their family and for their district, and also gets to not die.
Which is important, especially for our heroine, Katniss Everdeen, who is in the poorest of all of the districts, District 12.
District 12. The mining district.
Just trying to survive with her sister and her mom.
Yeah, her father died, and it's pretty hard to survive there, especially if you don't even have the source of income of coal mining. But luckily for Katniss, she likes to sort of escape into the woods with her friend Gale and hunt wild game and sell that on the black market, and because of that, she's able to sort of scrape by and support her family.
But looming over everything is the fact that the Hunger Games selection process is coming up, that each district has to offer up 2 of its young people between the ages of 12 and 18.
Yep, 1 boy, 1 girl.
So comes the day of they call it the reaping, I believe. Mm-hmm. Where they get all the children to get into their nicest clothes, and they draw their names from a bowl. And Katniss's sister, her 12-year-old sister, who only has 1 entry in the thing, gets selected. Katniss can't deal with that happening, can't imagine that happening, and so she volunteers very dramatically as the first person to ever volunteer from her particular district.
You could hear that clip in your opening theme.
Mm-hmm. By the way, in Italian, which I watched it in Italian, that phrase is "mi offro volontario."
Nice.
I offer myself as a volunteer. And the other person who's chosen is Peeta Mellark, who's an acquaintance of hers, a baker in the community who used to help her out by throwing her bread sometimes, and seems completely unprepared for intense combat. He's just a nice baker boy.
With nice biceps.
Nice biceps.
Those are important.
Yes, yeah.
And then, this is the perspective we need. And then we're are whisked off to the capital in a very modern-looking train.
Despite the fact that the districts are so poor and are living this sort of subsistence lifestyle, they have very little technology or anything. There's this like...
Sort of looks like the Appalachians in the 1920s or something.
It is supposed to be the Appalachians.
Ah.
Just not the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the future.
Yeah, we don't know what time period it is, but it's at some unspecified time in the future when things have gone to poop.
Yep.
So they get to the capital, where they're treated as celebrities, essentially. Mm-hmm. Peeta and Katniss.
And completely overwhelmed by all the amazing opulence, decadence of the capital.
Yeah, it's like going from 1920s Appalachia to modern-day Las Vegas.
Sure, yeah.
And they're immediately put on a talk show, hosted by Stanley Tucci.
There's a lot of just sort of joking around and, oh, well, this is good, you seem like a really nice fellow, and this will be, a super fun event. When obviously there's this subtext that they are all going to have to kill each other.
Yeah, it might be worth noting, I guess, what happens during Peeta's reality television show interview.
He says that he has a crush on someone, but it's tragic because the crush is on Katniss, who came here with him, and he's going to have to kill her or she will kill him. And the crowd is completely into this. And the crowd actually matters in this case because if you can get people to care about you, they can band together and buy you gifts for within the game. So they're already playing the game, even though they're not yet in the arena, trying to gather public support.
I was really hoping that there'd be some aspect like that. Really, what somebody should have come in there and done like a WWF style promo, rather than like the casual talk show thing. Somebody just be like, "I'm gonna win the Hunger Games because there is no challenge. I'm gonna destroy everybody."
Well, there's nothing quite on that level, but there are tributes from the less poor districts who volunteered and are gladiators by being raised and are super psyched to be there, and they're kind of hamming up to the crowd and flexing and all that sort of thing.
And so our heroes are the underdogs here. All they have with them is Haymitch. He won once in District 12, and now he's the coach, but he's drunk all the time.
He's had to train or mentor 25 other groups of people who have just horribly died. So obviously he's a little burned out in the whole process.
Well, he tries to avoid them, but then Katniss and Peeta show this sort of desire to stay alive and do what they can that he didn't really expect, and it kind of snaps him out of it a little bit. And he sort of is willing to get his hopes up for the first time in ages, because they make a good team. because Katniss is really deadly with a bow and Peeta is a really nice dude and people tend to like him.
And he can paint his hand to look like a tree.
He can paint the heck out of his hand to look like a tree.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of cakes he used to make in the baker shop, but...
Yeah, fun fact about District 12 is that tree cakes are a big part of their celebratory culture.
If you can't find the cake, they think that's the best thing ever. But Katniss also makes a splash in typical rough-hewn fashion by getting mad at the judges. At one point, they have to go through these different trials to be ranked. That's part of the...
It's basically handicapped, like, as if they're racehorses or something.
And they're not paying much attention to her. So she fires an arrow and shoots an apple out of the mouth of the pig they're all eating.
Right.
Is this the moment where we can give a shout out to Seneca Crane's beard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah, if there's one reason to watch this movie, it is the beard that Wes Bentley bears for the movie. And it's like two little sharks, like jaws, like the fins just crawling up his face, like they're going to burst out of his temple and attack you. It's glorious.
Anyway, for the purpose of this movie, in the scope of this movie, Seneca is the evil game master who's always trying to throw obstacles in their path.
Right. He's basically the producer of the games.
Yeah, and he answers to President Snow, president of the Capitol, who's trying to keep a lid on everything. And
I guess president of all of not only the Capitol but also the districts.
Right. He's the dictator of this world that we're in.
And he's real evil.
Yeah, he's just straight up evil.
The preliminaries can only go on so long. The time comes when Katniss is being prepared to go into the arena to fight these other children by Lenny Kravitz, who's her stylist, which is actually a really important role in this world because, yeah, you need to be popular. You need to be dressed right. She's now standing in the tube ready to be raised up into the arena.
They all come up, and there's 24 of them. The 12 districts send 2 people, so there's 24 people, and you stand there on your little raised platform, and you can't leave your platform because there's like mines around them or something. There's a little countdown, and then in front of them there's a giant pile of weapons. Weapons and survival gear and all sorts of equipment. And so at the very beginning, there's this big mad rush, which immediately results in massive casualties.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Yeah, I think about half the people die in the first 5 minutes of the whole process. Their mentor gives her the advice just before she goes in. Just book it for the forest. Do not go for the stuff in the middle. It's a trap.
So she goes for the stuff.
She tries to grab a backpack that's kind of off to the side.
Yeah, meanwhile, these teenagers are slaughtering each other everywhere.
Yeah.
But both her and Peeta make it to the forest. So it appears to be a very natural forest glade where all this is occurring, but it is the arena.
Because luckily we get to see the sort of behind the scenes. That's something you don't get in the book, is you get to see the sort of movie studio where Seneca Crane is pointing at people and being like, make this tree fall down, and they swipe their hand, and then in the arena a tree falls down.
And so Katniss does something that seems kind of natural, which is tries to escape from the arena.
Yeah, I don't know if she's escaping from the arena, in more that she's not just basically trying not to engage with the other contestants.
Yeah.
She's confident in her hunting and survival abilities, but not in her killing other people abilities.
Right.
To do so, she just basically goes as far away from everybody as possible, which obviously doesn't result in very good television.
So luckily they have the power to create a forest fire, so...
Yeah. I don't know, if I was watching the Hunger Games, I would be pretty annoyed if somebody was just like, oh, they got too far to the thing, a giant fireball killed them.
I'm just imagining that somewhere in the Capitol there's a guy in a t-shirt that says I love fire, who's just oh, I really hope someone gets burned to death this year, and he doesn't care about the people slicing and shooting each other, and he's just fire, and then he got all his hopes up when Katniss is stuck in the forest fire, and then he's oh.
Right, so she gets scalded pretty badly by this fire and runs back away from it, is herded back, and immediately runs into a group of the others who formed an alliance.
Yeah, including these professional Hunger Games participants, these that are trained to be deadly fighters, and surprisingly enough, Peeta.
No, Peeta, no.
So Peeta seems to not only be hanging out with them, but he actually seems to be leading them to her. Although it becomes clear pretty quickly that he's not actually betraying her too much, although he does seem to be hanging out with these people who are assholes.
Yeah, they're very mean. I just remembered middle school and the cool kids table. It's like that, except this time they're weaponized.
So she's chased up a tree by this alliance of mean kids, and they just decide to wait it out.
Some time passes as she's hiding up in this tree, and then she hears a little sort of whisper, and she notices Rue, who is one of the youngest participants. I think she is actually just straight up 12, and is hiding in a tree right sort of beside her tree, and motions over to this sort of a beehive of these horribly genetically engineered wasps, tracker jackers that have especially terrible stings that not only are incredibly painful but also cause horrible hallucinations. Katniss chops down the branch that they're on, drops this beehive or wasp nest on top of the people down on the ground, and chases them away, and also it kills somebody, but she does get hit by a few on the way.
Peeta seems to have made it out, though.
So she has horrible hallucinations and wakes up having been taken care of by Rue. So they form an alliance, the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they go back to the cornucopia where all the equipment was, and the cool kids have built up all of their supplies and protected it with mines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so one well-placed shot is enough to detonate everything and destroy all the supplies. So now she's really on their radar.
But in the aftermath of Katniss trying to regroup with Rue, unfortunately, she takes a spear to the stomach. Rue, not Katniss.
Yeah. She doesn't bury the body, but she sort of lays out Rue's body. I feel like she realizes that the people from Rue's district will be able to see her, and so she can try to honor Rue by saluting Rue and saluting her district and so forth.
But when she salutes to the district, you see back what's happening at the district that Katniss doesn't know, and the people are so sort of moved by what they've just seen that a riot breaks out against the peacekeepers, quote-unquote, from the capital.
At that point, she runs into Peeta again, who's been wounded.
Mm-hmm. But he has caked himself into looking like a bit of marshland or river or something.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm laughing. It's very
because it's a
effective.
Hilarious moment.
It's really good camouflage. That cake,
yeah.
Nobody would find that cake even until the end of the birthday.
And so they join up together and sort of hide in a nearby cave. There's sort of a few days go by where no one's getting killed. But Peeta's getting worse. I guess because he thinks he's going to die. He comes clean to Katniss that all the stuff he said in the interview wasn't just to get people to like them more and get sponsors and stuff. That was all true. He has had a crush on her, or has been in love with her for a very long time.
And she is sort of ambivalent. I mean, I don't think romance is the first thing on her mind because she's a survivalist, but she realizes that she has to sort of just go along with it as part of a survival strategy to be likable and to get presents from sponsors that could save her and save Peeta, who she certainly doesn't want dead. She cares about him, even though she's not really indulging the notion of romance at this time.
Yeah, so she takes some risks to get medicine for him and soup. Oh, right around that time, Haymitch makes a deal. So Haymitch, their coach, has turned out to be surprisingly effective. He's got his act together, and he's got them a lot of presents. And now it seems as though he's changed the rules of the game so that there can be 2 winners instead of 1.
But only if they're from the same district.
Right.
Which conveniently is only Katniss and Peeta at this point, I believe.
So this is purely a result of the capital basically being drunk on this romance that's happening. That must be a new thing. They have another run-in with one of the other contestants, the Fox-Face girl, who's one of the cleverest contestants.
Yeah, but luckily Peeta's stupidity gets her dead. She sees him picking poison berries, thinks, oh, I can steal some of these berries, and promptly dies because Peeta didn't realize they were poison. But they decide to pocket some poison berries for later. And now they're down to just 4 contestants, including the 2 of them. And this is when they decide to
unleash the hounds.
They do that thing.
Right. So there's genetically engineered monsters, which in the book are called mutations.
And in the book are specifically designed to look like the dead contestants, which is particularly messed up, but the movie just has them be, they look like Fluffy from the Harry Potter first movie.
Right. But it all ends up in a big fight on top of the cornucopia, the very final contestants.
Yeah. One contestant gets eaten by the dogs pretty quick, so it's just them and Kato, who's one of the popular kids. And he sort of makes this really remarkable speech about how he's dead already and he's broken on the inside, but he still can do this, and then they promptly work together to kill him. They feed him to the dogs, and Katniss puts him out of his misery with an arrow. Mm-hmm. And so they think that they've just won the Hunger Games, but a voice comes on the loudspeaker and says, "Oh, never mind, just kidding. There can only be one winner of the Hunger Games. Good luck."
Yeah. Serious dick move.
Yeah. Katniss and Peeta decide to try to force the hand of the game makers. Whatever it is, they say, all right, we'll poison ourselves with these berries and we'll commit joint suicide and there'll be no winner. So right before they're about to do that, Seneca Crane, good old Seneca Crane and his beard, come in and say, no, never mind, don't do that. We have 2 winners this year. And a helicopter promptly arrives to take them out of the arena.
Plausibility.
I think the big plausibility question is, could a Hunger Games actually exist? Is this too far out, or could this come about somehow?
It was specifically designed by Suzanne Collins, the author of The Hunger Games, to be like, oh, it's like our society. Like, we like reality TV. We like violence on TV. What if we combine the two?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of actual killing that you see on TV, sometimes with war footage.
Yeah. And,
yeah, you get to see children sort of put through the mill on the Disney Channel every day, which Suzanne Collins worked for, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Uh-huh. So she would see child stars go through that process, be all groomed, be all in the public eye, not so different.
I feel like in some ways the two goals of the Hunger Games are a little bit opposed. The Hunger Games as sort of an entertainment spectacle, which it's clearly for the capital, and the Hunger Games as this sort of tool of oppression. There's all this stuff about hope, where President Snow is like, why do we have somebody win? It's because we need to give people hope. But it's clearly not doing that, right? Like nobody in the districts wants to be in the like. It's not like people in the districts are like, yeah, it's tough, but I might win.
Hope I get it.
It'll be great.
In a couple of the districts, though, that's the thing, is that it's selective. The Hunger Games as a franchise is extraordinarily Marxist, and I'm not joking when I say this.
This is great. I want to hear about this.
It's more about class than anything else, varying from the fact that you need rich people to like you to help tilt the odds to your favor. May the odds be ever in your favor is hilarious because there's nothing that's by chance about the Hunger Games.
Wow,
everything is
great.
design. And there's the fact that the people in Districts 1 and 2 who produce the gladiator type of tributes, they're from the less poor districts. They're from the districts that make sort of the luxury goods for the capital, and they have this sort of pride, actually, in being subservient to the capital, and they have this sort of very middle-class, upper-middle-class vibe to them, and they sort of say, well, we're better than the people from the poorer districts. So they enjoy the Hunger Games on a different level than either the capital or the poor districts experience them.
That's cool.
Yeah, and when you win the Hunger Games, you get all these extra privileges, right? Like you get food, more food.
Yeah, and in District 12, say, it's like survival. It's like, oh, my district can actually eat this year, but in one of the first 2 districts, it's more about the glory. It's more about the status.
But they also are doing better as far as food if they win. So there's that too. They get privilege piled on top of privilege as the sort of lapdog districts.
Yep.
Definitely the middle class.
Yep.
And then there's also the thing with, you can get more food from the peacekeepers or from the capital or from whoever if you put your name into the draw more times.
Right, which makes it more likely that the poorer children from each already poor district are going to be more susceptible to going into the games. And there is class disparity in Katniss's district, as Peeta is a baker and his family has food, and Katniss is from a mining family that barely has that. So the fact that Katniss, for example, entered her name in probably more than Peeta did. So he does get picked, so it's still possible. There's still this risk, but it's more likely that the more destitute you are, the more likely you're going to go into the games, and then the more likely you're going to die.
Yeah. Which is an interesting, that's definitely an interesting idea. Like if you were going to volunteer or something, you could get a whole ton of food and be like, I don't care how many times my name is in the thing, because I'm screwed anyway. So bring me all the food. Let's put my name in 100 times.
Yeah, that's one way you could game it, right? Is if you had somebody, you could have them do all the tessera, as they're called, and then volunteer, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the question of plausibility is actually a really disturbing question, because it's sort of saying, well, is the perfect mix of dehumanization of the working class, class disparity, enjoyment of violence, and mass media, if you mix these in just the right way, could you have the Hunger Games? It's like, well, we have a lot of that stuff already, so I hope it's not plausible, but...
I mean, some of these dating shows are, like, very emotionally cruel. People are not actually being stabbed, but they're having their hearts ripped out. Is that stretching? Yeah. But I mean, some of them just seem brutal. Like I look at X Factor, because I watched the X Factor in Italian here, because my former neighbor, Vivian Grillo, was a contestant up until the final 10.
She wasn't, no, that was the voice where there was an Italian nun.
Oh, yeah. No, she wasn't the nun.
Okay.
I'd love to know her. She seems cool. But this was... Right, and so yeah, they put them on the spot in terms of national humiliation. Like one time her feedback mic didn't work, and so she was singing off key for the whole time in front of 2,000 people plus the audience at home, and then she got reamed out for it by the judges. So that's not murdering, but it is cruelty to a 17-year-old.
So it's certainly not very, and especially like the aspect of, where they have them sort of, they have them all come in on the chariots, and they have the sort of talk show where they're talking about them, where they are sort of being, treated as reality show contestants. And you can imagine that the population of the capital, you can kind of forget or you aren't emphasizing the part where 23 of the people will die. They not minimize that, it's sort of disassociated a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at Effie, who's the woman who comes to district and picks the names, as you hear her constantly throughout the movie sort of rationalizing to herself. Like, she'll be like, oh, it's too bad you're going to probably have to die in the games, but look, meanwhile, you get to stay at the Capitol, and we're going to treat you real nice, and you never got to live like this at home.
Yeah, look at how nice her hotel room is. Yeah.
I mean, she's quite an interesting character.
She has no perspective on the sort of slaughter involved. And yeah, about half of the districts, or some of the more privileged ones, are kind of deluded about it as well. Like President Snow uses this language of honor to your district.
Right.
He said glory and honor, sacrifice. Only District 12 does it seem like a complete joke.
The district that Rue comes from is clearly not very happy about the whole situation either.
We don't see much of the other districts, really, at this point.
No.
Yeah, I happen to know it's the agricultural district.
Yeah.
That's where most of the food comes from.
Yep.
People happen to resemble African-American people. I think they played that down in the movie.
Well, race in the Hunger Games, I'm not even going to get so much into because,
Are the districts...
Katniss is whiter in the movie than she is in the books, and in the books, there's essentially two races in District 12, and Peeta's from, the white people race, essentially, and Katniss is actually from a mixed household, where her mother is from that other higher caste, and her father was this sort of vaguely described person of color. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie does not want to get into that.
Yeah. I mean, so the other aspect of the Hunger Games, the goal as a suppression technique, I feel like it's not that good an idea. Now you have a situation where there are some districts that literally have, academies where they're training children to fight.
Wow, that's a good point.
One, you are not only allowing, but actually encouraging the districts to train to be better fighters, and you are showing it to everybody very explicitly. There are projectors set up all over.
How could they not expect people to rebel when they're watching their children die?
Yeah.
Well, Snow claims that it's because, but there's always that small chance that my child will be the one who makes it out.
Right.
And that is enough to sort of like keep them down and be like, let's not rock the boat because it could be worse, and at least they're going to let one person out and it could be my kid.
Right.
Right.
So do you think that Panem, which is this world, is at an actual crisis point because of some bigger reasons? I didn't see any indication of that. It seemed like really Katniss was the catalyst in a way, like that things could have kept going the way they were.
It seems like, I don't know about whether there's some external thing, but it does seem like unrest is sort of simmering, maybe more so than it has been previously. I mean, certainly people in District 12 don't seem to be very happy about the situation.
Are other countries even a thing?
No, we don't learn about any other countries. Here's something, which is that I was looking this up online. The population of all the districts is really small. Like, the population of District 12 is 8,000 people. It says so in the book. And the population of the capital is 100,000 people.
Right. So this entire, like, the entirety of the space we're dealing with, like, from the capital to District 12, is not very big at all.
Or there's a large amount of irradiated wasteland in between.
That's true.
No, we also don't know exactly what the continent looks like. It may have been partly submerged in ocean.
Right.
North America in this dystopic future might not look on a map like North America now.
Right.
Their more central areas are hinted at. Like, the capital has been suggested to be like Denver, Colorado, possibly?
Yeah, the Rockies, probably.
Yeah, so it's a strange world, which is probably only about 2 million people in total.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take that into account when you think about the stability or the dynamics of it.
Right, so the entire thing is just basically like a city now. A largish city.
I wasn't sure if I believed the way that the capital was depicted on screen if it's only 100,000 people. Like, that's like a smallish college town, right? Like, would they have gleaming big buildings and so on?
Well, but I mean, I guess the decadence is a real big part of the whole thing. So that, like, apartment that they are in while they're getting prepared for the Hunger Games, that might be that's like, maybe just there are 100,000 people, but everybody has ginormous apartments and everybody has, a ton of space, and it's like everyone is rich, effectively.
Okay. Anything else quick on plausibility?
Just the more I think about it, the more plausible it is.
Especially when you're talking about such a small population. Obviously some horrible stuff has happened in the world and things. So you can imagine that
there's been breaks. There's been this is a double apocalypse, because there was some unspecified apocalypse, maybe a nuclear war, and then there was this rebellion. It was absolutely horrifying.
So you can imagine the sort of standards of what is considered to be okay can shift quite a lot. When there are so few people, and when death and fighting is something that is very close in terms of their history and in terms of their day-to-day lives, then you can imagine something like the Hunger Games would be more acceptable.
Scariness.
Very scary. It's like it's not like the mild salsa of scariness. It's like the medium salsa.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting because it's we do other we've done
corn chunks or not. Sorry,
we've done other dystopia stuff where it's been like where there's sort of this uneasiness because the society is so tightly controlled and everyone has to do their assigned job and yada yada yada. Whereas in Hunger Games, the scariness is much more immediate. It's you're going to be put into a place where people are going to try and kill you.
Yeah, and where you have children killing each other. We haven't really hit that yet in our dystopias.
Children killing other children?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how scary is this society outside of the chance of being chosen to be in the Hunger Games?
Well, there's certainly the threat of losing someone close to you. Is that's the whole reason Katniss volunteers, is because she fears losing her sister.
Right. I guess if you're over 18, you can't volunteer even.
So, and imagine 8,000 people, 2 children dying every year. That's a fair impact on a community.
Yeah.
That's quite nightmarish to think about. And yet, I'm sure that happens in real poor communities as well, just through disease or whatnot, which they also have.
Oh yeah, there's a couple times during the Hunger Games that Katniss gets, healing salve or whatever. For her, it's clearly something that is completely amazing to her. So there isn't any kind of medical technology of that, even nearing that sophistication in the districts. So it's probably pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, her father dies in a mining accident. It has nothing to do with the Hunger Games. It's just because she lives in a scary dystopia where things like that happen.
So what about the Capitol? Did you find the Capitol scary? I mean, apart from the very big thing about the Capitol, obviously, is that they're getting entertainment out of the districts, murdering each other, and the children of the districts dying. Like, that's the fundamental fact of their existence that makes it horrible. But apart from that, it seemed like they were trying to paint it as decadent, as silly, as appearance-obsessed. I mean, I was a little bit weirded out by that. I don't know what.
It's sort of presented as this very sort of decadent, you're saying like Las Vegas or whatever, but clearly President Snow has a much tighter Iron Fist type control over the Capitol. Even if you are a citizen in the Capitol, you can be just killed if you do something to step out of line.
Yeah,
right.
But at least some of the people of the Capitol have created a false sense of security for themselves, and even if the danger is there, they don't immediately feel it, even if maybe they should.
Yeah, if you live in a dictatorship that allows you to be extremely wealthy and privileged and also have this great entertainment once a year that you can obsess over, then you might not be that conscious of the fact that you're in a dictatorship. But yes, the people in the Capitol are also at the mercy of President Snow.
Also, any society that creates genetically engineered wasps and giant dogs is just automatically gets us scary.
Yeah, well, that tells us something about the wars that happened, that they used absolutely
true, yeah.
horrifying weapons in the wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, those creatures were probably not invented for the Hunger Games.
No, the Tracker Jackers were invented, and it's obviously a terror weapon. Like, it's scarier than any weapon I can think of in real life. To have wasps that follow you, once they lock onto you, you can't shake them.
And they make you hallucinate and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, they give you fear hallucinations.
It actually reminds me a little bit, I was reading an article not too long ago about Dubai. This article was talking specifically about a person working for a company there and got into hard times and was like put into debtor's prison. And it was like, oh, right.
Wow.
There isn't the same concept of bankruptcy or whatever, but sufficient wealth will sort of isolate you from some of that stuff. But clearly in the capital, there's some seriously dangerous stuff going on.
How would they do?
In this segment, we talk about a role of somebody in the society and think about how we would do in that role, imagine ourselves into that role.
Yeah, well, for me, there was no use sort of picturing myself in the Hunger Games. One, I have pretty good luck at, like, rolling D20s. I don't think I'd get picked. Second of all, I'd be the one who falls off the pedestal before the timer finishes, and they would just blow me up. So that would be me in the Hunger Games. And I don't.
So you just lose all motor control and just fall over?
Just fall over.
Okay.
Well, but then I was thinking, like, well, would I deserve to be in the Capitol but the point of everything in the society is that it's random, is that there's no deserving. So it'd be sort of silly to be like, which district would, take this quiz, which district in the Hunger Games is right for you?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I like to sort of think, like, what's it like being a random person in one of the lapdog districts? Is sort of being immersed in this culture. Not obviously immediately I'm like 6 years old, they're like, yeah, we're not training you for the Hunger Games, but growing up in this culture that is a victim of violence and celebrates it anyway, and also meanwhile I could spend my day like embroidering throw pillows, which is something I would totally be into. So it's like, on the one hand, like culture of violence, on the other hand, like I could perfect my embroidery game. So So I've decided to make myself medium morally culpable and get to be like a little stylish without being Seneca Crane's beard.
I mean, the aspect you're saying about, you know, how you would be one of the people who just steps off the thing and dies immediately. Like, I imagine, like, they've been doing it for, whatever, 74 years. Like, that's got to be a problem. Like, what if 1 year everyone just dies in the first melee at the beginning? Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, okay, well, that was the Hunger Games. All right, good job, everybody. Go home.
We sold all this commercial time.
Yeah. Or the year where,
Are there commercial books?
It was all 12-year-olds that were chosen. It's like, oh, this is going to be bad.
Yeah, keep in mind, if you're fighting in the Hunger Games, it's not you now. It's you when you were between 12 and 18.
Oh, God.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to say that my hand-to-hand combat skills haven't changed that much since I was 18. So
I would say they're maybe 5 or 6 times as good of 0.
Right.
Okay, so for a living, I make videos and stuff. And so what I immediately got interested in is the production of the Hunger Games. Uh-huh. And so, like, I would be, like, one of the people, you know, way in the back in the, you know, when Seneca Crane is standing around doing his thing. It'd be, like, one of the people who's, like, operating one of the little remote cameras or something, you know, zooming around and or writing on the invisible dome that covers the top, covers the entire Hunger Games thing, being like, you know, today's specials or whatever, or, you know, whatever the different things they
today's
write.
specials.
I mean, it's mostly about
minestrone today.
Yeah, it's mostly about which people have died, but I feel like there could be some, you know, creativity involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an objectively very well-produced television show.
Yeah. That balance between, you know, you're trying to create a television show and you're also obviously trying to have the right outcome happen or whatever, you know, stuff where they're like forcing Katniss to go back towards the other combatants and stuff. But, you know, there's got to be some kind of you want to just like have 100 frogs drop on their heads for no particular reason, just because it'll be funny.
It's a biblical reference.
Yeah, it'll make good television.
I'm sure there's like stars among them, people who bring their own specific touch.
Yeah.
People who come up with particularly twisted death traps.
All right. Bring in the dog guy. All right, go get Dave.
Well, Seneca has his favorite. He keeps being like, hey, Lucia, and she's this one lady, and she's like, hey. And she seems to be really good at setting up ways to kill children at a distance.
Yeah.
She puts under special skills on her resume.
And of course, there is certainly the aspect where the people in that room, you know, you're watching everything through holographic displays and televisions and stuff, and so there certainly would be like a disassociation with it, right? You would start seeing it from a very sort of clinical point of view, being like, yes, I think it would be better to the horrible monsters maybe put over there, and that'll do that, and then we'll have fire, and then maybe another fireball there, and that kind of stuff. Like, I think you would definitely get, you know, start seeing it from a very sort of practical point of view and dehumanizing the actual contestants.
Yeah, I really believe that would be easy to happen. Oh, one thing that was interesting was that they made them all wear these matching uniforms in the production room, as opposed to in a real TV production room where they'd probably be all wearing like their own fashion or like very casual clothing.
Yeah,
and almost as though they had to be like disciplined, like bridge crew. But I think that vibe is a little off. I think that they're just going for generic dystopia in that case. And the reality would be they're all kind of funky, empowered people.
Yeah, Paul, how would you do wearing an all-white jumpsuit?
Oh, you know, you keep spilling stuff. Oh, no. You get fired because you spilled something on yourself.
So I got interested in the train at the beginning, and so I imagined myself as the train conductor on the train. So it's a bit of an incongruity that we have these 12 districts that are, some of them look very old-fashioned, but we have this very modern train traveling in between them. And it also has all these nice old-fashioned bits of decor. So I'd like to be involved in the train culture because you're one of the only people who regularly travels between the districts. And I assume there's also a lot of freight moving and so on
Do you think there are hobos on the backs of these trains?
Wow.
Future hobos?
That's even better. Yeah, like there must be illegal smuggling of people from one district to another somehow. So maybe I'd be involved in that. I'd be one of the few people who'd see all the different districts and see them evolve over time. I probably have a serious part to play in the rebellion. That's a bit of a spoiler, but yeah, you can tell there's going to be rebellions. Yeah, just the satisfaction of driving this very modern train in a world that is mostly sort of bombed out, and it's one of the few remnants of civilization that's left outside of the capital.
Hope for the future.
Silence. We're just like, I don't know, man.
So at the end of Hunger Games, they've won, and they're going on the talk shows. Haymitch says you have to be very careful not to make President Snow feel threatened. So you have to say that you just couldn't stand the thought of life without Peeta, is why you did that thing with the berries. Not as a fuck you, President Snow.
Right. I mean, they've effectively become citizens of the capital in some ways, in terms of their status, but they're still not safe.
Yeah, Paul should do most of the talking because he's the only one who really he probably knows the least about what's actually happening in the future. So you can speculate and we'll just judge you.
As far as I know, it'll go, everything happens and it's fine. Things go along. Katniss, goes back to District 12 and, has tons of money and they relax and she, makes lots of friends. And,
you guessed.
It's pretty much.
But does she choose Gale or Peeta? That is the most important thing about the future.
We didn't talk about that.
That is a tricky topic.
It was relevant, but it wasn't the thing that I was worried about because there's so much more at stake, and to be obsessed about the love triangle is to sort of play into that capital's very game.
Wow. Yeah. I guess there's hope for Peeta and Katniss because they're going to be hanging out together as the twin victors. But who cares? Yeah.
This idea that sort of, okay, you guys won because you are these star-crossed lovers. You guys better darn well be real in love. As opposed to the real situation, which is that obviously Peeta has a lot of feelings for Katniss, and Katniss really likes Peeta, but not in that way.
So there's a lot of hope for Katniss specifically, that she gets to live and she brings honor to her district, or brings food to her district.
More important than honor.
More important, yeah, for District 12, for sure. But there doesn't seem to be any signs that it's causing severe problems for the capital, like in the immediate future. President Snow seems to have operated cleverly to contain it. He's sustained a slight humiliation.
But he seems still kind of wary. Like, we see him at the end of the movie, and he doesn't look eased.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be much more happy if one of the deadly, but not necessarily that savvy people from one of the District 1 or 2 had won. That would just be happy with the, yay, I'm rich now, and I can get a bunch of stuff, and lots of honor, as opposed to somebody like Katniss, who clearly has her own goals.
Go on. Shoot. And we both go down and you win. Go on. Dead anyway. I always was, right? I didn't know that till now. How's that? Is that what they want? Huh? Huh? No. Nah. I can still do this. I can still do this. One more kill. It's the only thing I know how to do. Bring pride to my district. Not that it matters.
So that was The Hunger Games. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Gaby.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was fun. as fun as it can be to talk about the systematic enjoyment of violence of the death of children.
Which is real fun, considering how well the movies and the books have sold. So there you go.
Yeah, so fun.
Yeah, there's this weird paradox that we're kind of, at least for the first movie, we're enjoying the same exact thing that the people in the Capitol are enjoying.
Yeah, in the book, it's not quite as weird. We're reading about it rather than watching it.
Right. Yeah.
But thank you for having me. I really did have a good time.
Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to know whether to be sort of solemn in this book or be like, yeah, go get him, Katniss. The movie does make it so that she doesn't actually directly kill anybody without provocation.
Yeah. I thought, which is a little bit
cheat.
Yeah, a little bit of a cop-out. But
the next one, we're also going to do the others, and it gets much grimmer.
Yay.
So yeah, thanks for listening. And it is a Loading Ready Run podcast.
Yeah. Join us next time when we're going to be talking about A Boy and His Dog. A reminder that this podcast is presented by Loading Ready Run, and everything on Loading Ready Run is supported by our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Our theme song is by Bradley Rains, and the interstitial segments are by Kiara Kant. So if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe, rate, or review it on iTunes. And if you want to give us some feedback, you can go to our forum at loadingreadyrun.com/forum. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks.
And Gaby, would you give us a I Volunteer as Tribute?
I volunteer as tribute! Oh my god.
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
I like it.
I really felt like you wanted to be a tribute.
Okay, awesome. And our signature sign off, which I now know how to say in Italian. That was great. Which we'll finish off. E che le probabilità sempre essere a vostro favore. And so, may the odds always be in your favor. Goodbye.
Bye.
Ci vediamo.
Perfect.